All right, so get this. Today we're diving headfirst into product discovery, and you sent us some really interesting stuff about this. Seems like you're getting ready for something big, especially all the early stage stuff like user research. So we'll definitely hit on that today. Let's see what we can uncover.
Oh, I am so ready for this. It just amazes me how often they jump right into building stuff without like any groundwork. It's like they're heading out on this road trip with no map and no idea where they're going.
You're so right. It's crazy. And speaking of maps, we've got these awesome excerpts from it's UXcel's Intro to Product Discovery lesson. Today, we're on a mission, people. We're going to get you guys to really understand what product discovery is, why it's like the holy grail of product development, and how it works in the real world. We'll break down the phases, the tough parts, the whole 9 yards. By the end, you'll be product discovery ninjas ready to take on any challenge.
Love that. And it's not even just about avoiding disaster. It's about like unlocking potential, finding those aha moments that make people fall in love with a product.
You got it, 100%. Okay, so let's start with the basics, shall we? What exactly is this thing called product discovery?
Okay, imagine this. You're building a house, right? Would you do it without a blueprint? No way. Well, product discovery, that's your blueprint for your product.
Okay, that's a good one. I like the analogy. But let's go deeper. Like the source material, it talks about figuring out what your customers actually need before you even think about building anything. It's not about building something cool just for the heck of it. It's about solving a real problem for people.
Exactly. It's about making sure you're building the right thing, not just, building a thing. And sometimes, get this, sometimes the problem you think you're solving, it's not even the real problem at all. Product discovery helps you see that.
It's like that whole Segway thing, Back in the day, everyone thought it was going to be this huge transportation revolution, but it turns out people didn't really need a fancy scooter just to go short distances.
Oh, totally. It's the perfect example of how even super smart people can miss the mark if they don't get like what their users really need. And that's where value risk comes into play, right? We need to know for sure that our product is actually valuable to people.
Can you give us an example of what that value risk might look like in real life? Sometimes these terms can sound a bit abstract.
Yeah, for sure. So think about this. You spend months building this super complicated app that like manages your sock drawer. It might be a technical marvel, but the value is pretty low, right? Not many people need or want that. That's high value risk. Product discovery helps us avoid those kind of situations.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So we've got our blueprint. We're all about creating something valuable, but where do we even start? Who's involved in this whole thing?
This is where the product trio comes in. It's this awesome idea they talk about in the source material. It's like a product manager, a designer, and a developer, all working together from the very beginning.
So it's not just like one lone wolf going at it, huh? It's a team effort.
Totally, a team effort. And they each have their own special thing they bring to the table. The product manager is like the voice of the customer, but also the business, making sure everything aligns. The designer is all about making it user-friendly, and just fun to use. And then the developer figures out how to make it all actually work.
Like you got this mini dream team for your product, making sure it's well-rounded right from the start.
Yes, exactly. And what's cool is they really emphasize collaboration. It's like, think of a jazz trio, each musician doing their thing, but like harmonizing perfectly to create something even better.
Yeah, I can see how that teamwork would make everything better. But let's be real, even with a dream team and a solid plan, product development can be, risky.
Yeah.
How does product discovery help us with all that?
That's a great question. That's like one of his most important jobs. Product discovery helps us tackle those risks head on. Specifically, there are 4 big ones. Value risk, which we've touched on. Then there's usability risk, feasibility risk, and business viability risk.
Okay, let's unpack those because I have a feeling this is where things get really juicy.
For sure. So usability risk is all about how easy it is for people to actually USC the product. We've all been there, right? Trying to use a poorly designed app, it's frustrating. Product discovery, it helps prevent that by making sure usability is baked in from the beginning.
Totally. I mean, the best idea in the world is going to tank if people can't figure out how to use it.
100%. Then we have feasibility risk, which is, can we actually build this thing with the time, the skills, and the tech that we have available? And then finally, there's business viability risk. Does this product make sense for our business? Will we actually make money from it?
Wow. Okay, so product discovery is like a risk assessment, a reality check, and a creativity booster all in one.
You got it. It helps us face those risks early on. instead of just charging ahead and hoping for the best. And it does this by really focusing on understanding user needs and, this is key, being committed to constantly learning and adapting.
Okay, all of this makes perfect sense. But I'm guessing product discovery isn't always smooth sailing, right? What are some of the bumps in the road that people might hit?
You're right, it's not always easy, even with the best intentions. The source material talks about some questions that can help us navigate these challenges. These questions are like our compass. Is it valuable? Is it usable? Is it feasible? And is it strategic?
So even with those guideposts, there are still hurdles to clear.
Definitely. Sometimes the biggest hurdle is really getting your users' needs. It's like, think about it. Sometimes people don't even know what they want, or they can't really explain it well.
It's like that saying, people don't know what they want until you show it to them.
Exactly. And then even when you have a good idea of what users need, there's the challenge of balancing those needs with the business goals and, of course, what's actually possible to build. It's like walking a tightrope. You might have this incredible idea that's going to solve a huge problem for users, but if it's not possible to build or it doesn't align with what the company wants to do, then it might not be the right path.
I see, yeah. Sounds like product discovery is a balancing act for sure.
It is. And then there's, the time crunch. Product discovery takes time, real time and effort to do it right. You have to gather feedback, test things out, iterate the whole shebang. But in today's world, everyone's in a hurry, right? There's always pressure to move fast.
So how do you balance that need to be thorough with the need for speed? This feels like a constant battle for product teams.
That is the million-dollar question. It's all about finding that rhythm, and we'll get into that a bit later. But for now, just remember this. Product discovery, it's not a one-time thing. It's something that's always happening. It's about always learning and adapting to make sure you're building products that truly hit the mark with your users.
Okay, I think we've laid some good groundwork here and explored the potential pitfalls. But what I'm really curious about is how product discovery actually works in practice. What are the main phases involved?
You're ready to get into the nitty-gritty. The source material outlines a few key phases, and they're all definitely worth looking at closely. Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it. Let's figure out how to make product discovery a success story.
All right, so let's start with the first and probably the most important phase, understanding user needs. This is where it all begins.
I'm all in. Let's crack the code of what makes our users tick.
This is where we really get to know our users inside and out. It's all about asking those key questions. What are their pain points? What are they trying to achieve? What motivates them? We need to gather as much info as we can to understand their needs and challenges, on a human level. Think interviews, surveys, just watching them, anything that helps us see things from their perspective.
This reminds me of the fitness app example from the source material. It's like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't start designing features before you really understood the bigger problems users are facing, like finding the motivation to exercise or making time for workouts in their busy schedule.
Exactly. It's all about the why behind the what, Why are users struggling with this particular problem? What's going on underneath? Once we get that, then we can brainstorm solutions that really resonate with them.
Okay, so we've talked to our users, watched them in their natural habitat, and we've got this gold mine of insights. What's the next step on our product discovery adventure?
So now we move on to validating the problem. It's kind of like double checking our work before we go any further. Just because someone says, hey, I have this problem, doesn't automatically mean it's a real problem, one that's actually worth putting all this effort into solving.
So it's about telling the difference between real needs and things that are just, fleeting or maybe just one person's issue. So how do we go about validating a problem? What's the process like?
Well, we got to make sure that the problem is actually a big deal and that it's happening to enough people to, justify focusing on it. Let's say users are telling us they have trouble staying organized. We can't just take their word for it. We need to dig deeper, talk to more people, maybe do some surveys, and actually watch how they're doing things now. This helps make sure we're not wasting time building something that, nobody really needs.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've seen so many products that seem promising just totally flop because they were trying to solve a problem that, well, it turned out wasn't really a problem for most people.
Exactly. And once we've validated the problem, then the real fun begins. It's time to brainstorm.
All right, here we go. Brainstorming time. Creativity unleashed. No idea is too crazy. Do you have any favorite brainstorming techniques? Any secrets you can share?
This is where we let our imaginations run wild, right? come up with all sorts of potential solutions to the problem we've uncovered. Personally, I'm a big fan of mind mapping. It's a way to visualize all the different ideas and see how they connect. And don't underestimate the power of good old-fashioned sketching. Sometimes just getting those ideas out of your head and onto paper can spark something amazing.
I love that. It's about giving yourself permission to think outside the box, explore every possibility, even if it seems a little out there at first. But at some point, we have to, wrangle those ideas and make some decisions. So how do we go from this whirlwind of ideas to a concrete solution?
You're right, we can't brainstorm forever, much as we might like to. The next step is prototyping. We need to bring those ideas to life, but not like building the whole finished product, not yet. We're talking about creating these simple, tangible models of our solutions. It's like those early sketches you see of inventions in museums. They're not perfect, but they're full of potential.
So we're talking about like sketches, wireframes, mock-ups, that kind of thing. Anything that helps us visualize how our solution would actually work in the real world.
Exactly. It's all about making something real that we can actually test out with users, get their feedback, and then make it better. It doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. It just has to work well enough that we can get a sense of how the solution might function. Remember when Airbnb, they prototyped their experiences feature using just sticky notes and paper?
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can achieve with low-fidelity prototyping.
Wow, sticky notes. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to test things out quickly and cheaply. So once we have our prototype, what happens next? Do we just hand it to users and see what they do?
Not quite. The testing phase is all about evaluating that prototype with real people, seeing how it stacks up against their needs, and whether it actually solves the problem we've identified. But it's not just about, tossing it over the fence and hoping for the best. We need to watch how they're using it, really pay attention, gather feedback, and figure out what needs tweaking.
So it's about observing everything from how intuitive the product feels to whether it actually helps them solve their problems in a way that feels, natural and enjoyable.
You got it. And there are all sorts of methods we can use. User testing sessions, surveys, interviews. Think of it like a dress rehearsal before the big opening night. We want to make sure everything's running smoothly before we share it with the world.
Love the analogy. And speaking of sharing it with the world, what comes after testing? Is that when we finally get to show off our solution to the big decision makers?
You bet. The last stage of product discovery is presenting our solution to the stakeholders, the people who need to give us the green light. We got to get everyone on board and make sure they're as excited about this as we are.
This is where we step into the boardroom, make our pitch right. Got to be clear, concise, compelling. Nobody wants to sit through a rambling presentation.
Exactly. This is our time to shine. We need to highlight the key takeaways from all our research, show off our prototype, and really explain how our solution addresses the problem. But it's not just about being persuasive, it's also about being honest. We need to be upfront about any challenges or limitations and address any concerns they might have.
So it's about building confidence, getting them pumped about our solution, but also being realistic about, the road ahead.
Precisely. And remember, this final presentation, it's not the end of the road, it's just the beginning of the next chapter. Even as we move from discovery into development, that spirit of continuous learning, it needs to stick with us.
Well, that actually brings up something that really stood out to me in all the research you sent over, that emphasis on continuous learning. It's not just about that initial discovery phase. It's about constantly iterating and adapting based on new information.
Absolutely. It's about accepting that we don't have all the answers from the get-go, and that's okay. We need to be always experimenting, testing, and tweaking things based on what we learn from our users and what's happening in the market.
That's such a valuable shift in perspective. But isn't there a risk of getting stuck in this research phase forever and never actually building anything? How do you find that balance between exploring and, getting things done?
That's a great question. It's definitely a balancing act, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer. But here's the thing. We can't let the fear of making a mistake stop us from moving forward. We call that analysis paralysis. Sometimes we just got to trust our gut, make a call, and see what happens.
So it's about being informed, but also being decisive, not letting that quest for perfect knowledge hold us back from taking action.
You nailed it. And hey, even if we make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, right? We can always course correct, adjust, learn from it. That's the beauty of this iterative approach.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. But let's talk about something I think a lot of people struggle with. We've talked about balancing user needs with business goals and what's actually possible to build. But what happens when those things clash? How do we navigate those tricky situations? It seems inevitable that sometimes what users want might not be feasible or align with the business strategy.
You're right, that happens all the time in product development. It's hardly ever a simple equation. Sometimes what users are asking for might be too technically difficult or too expensive to create. And then other times, a feature that's like a slam dunk for the business might make for a clunky, frustrating user experience.
So how do we find a solution when all these different forces are pulling us in opposite directions? It feels like we need to be master negotiators, always finding compromises and coming up with creative solutions.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot where we're satisfying user needs, meeting business goals, and staying within the realm of what's possible. And sometimes that means making hard choices. We might have to say no to a feature that users love if it just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint.
Yeah, it's about making strategic choices that benefit the product as a whole, even if it means, maybe disappointing some users in the short term. So are there any frameworks or strategies that can help us in these tough situations? It feels like it would be so easy to get stuck in a stalemate, trying to please everyone.
Absolutely. One approach is to prioritize ruthlessly. We got to constantly ask ourselves, what's the most important thing right now? What's going to have the biggest impact on our users and our business? By zeroing in on the most critical stuff, we can make those tough choices even when everything feels important.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get overwhelmed with all the possibilities and lose sight of what truly matters. Prioritization, that seems like a crucial skill for anyone involved in creating products.
It is, and it's not just about prioritizing features, it's also about prioritizing risks. Remember those 4 major risks we talked about earlier? Value risk, usability risk, feasibility risk, and business viability risk. Well, sometimes we've got to make trade-offs. Maybe we decide to take on more usability risk if it means minimizing value risk, for example. It's all about strategic decision-making based on what makes sense for our specific product.
So it's about balancing those risks and making smart choices, right? It's
Yeah.
not about eliminating risk entirely. It's about managing it well.
Exactly. Another thing that helps a ton is communication and collaboration, constantly. We need to keep everyone in the loop, from the developers to the stakeholders, and make sure they understand why we're making the decisions we're making. Open communication, that goes a long way in resolving conflicts and keeping the project on track.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about teamwork, making sure everyone's on the same page and finding solutions together. Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier, continuous learning. You talk about it as a mindset shift, not just, a step in the process. What does that actually mean?
You're right on the money. It's about accepting that we don't have all the answers right away, and that's okay. We need to be constantly experimenting, testing things out, and making changes based on what we learn. It's like gardening. You plant the seeds, those are your initial ideas, but then you got to nurture them, gather feedback, and make adjustments to help them grow into something beautiful and fruitful.
I love that analogy. It's like product development is this ongoing process of growth and evolution. But how do we know when we've learned enough? When is it time to move from the discovery phase to actually building the product?
That is the question that keeps every product team up at night. There's no easy answer, but there are a few signs that tell us we're ready to move forward. First off, we got to have a crystal clear understanding of the problem we're tackling and who we're solving it for. We should be able to explain that problem in a nutshell and know our target audience inside and out.
Okay, so we've done our homework, we've validated the problem, and we know our audience like the back of our hand. What's next? What other checkpoints are we looking for?
Second, we need a solution that's been tested and proven. We've put our prototypes through their paces, gathered feedback from users, and made changes until we're confident it's usable, people actually want it, and it's actually possible to build. We're not just winging it, we have real data to back up our choices.
So we're not just throwing something out there and crossing our fingers. We have evidence that this solution is actually on the right track.
Exactly. Third, we need the stakeholders to be on board. Everyone involved needs to be behind the proposed solution and willing to support its development. The last thing we want is to invest all this time and effort into building something only to have it shot down later because we don't get the okay from the people who matter.
Right. We got to make sure everyone's singing from the same song sheet. It's about getting everyone aligned with the vision.
Absolutely. And finally, we need a game plan. We need to know what we're building, how we're going to build it, and what success looks like. We're not just jumping into the pool without checking the depth. We have a roadmap and a destination in mind.
Okay, so we've got a rock-solid understanding of the problem, a solution that's been validated, buy-in from the higher-ups, and a plan for moving forward. Sounds like we're ready to build. But I'm curious, does the learning stop once we shift from discovery to development? Does everything we've learned just become irrelevant?
That's a great question. And the answer is a big fat no. Learning never stops, not in this game. We got to keep gathering feedback, watching how users are interacting with our product, and tweaking things based on what we learn. Product development, it's this never-ending cycle of learning, iterating, and improving.
So it's not like we flip a switch and all that knowledge from the discovery phase just goes out the window. It's about weaving those insights into the whole development process.
You're absolutely right, and this leads to a really important point. Product discovery isn't just a one-time thing, it's a way of thinking. It's about always trying to understand our users better, adapting to their needs, and refining our products so they actually deliver real value.
I love that. It's about embracing that constant evolution, that ongoing quest to create something truly remarkable. But I think a lot of our listeners are probably itching for some practical tips, some actionable advice on how to make product discovery a success. They're probably thinking, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but how do I actually do this?
You're right. Let's get tactical. Are you ready to dive into some strategies you can use right away?
You bet. Let's get practical. Give us the goods.
First and foremost, make user research your priority. Make it an essential part of your process, not an afterthought. Talk to your users, observe them, gather as much data as you can to understand their needs, their pain points, what they're hoping to achieve. Don't just rely on assumptions or your gut feeling. Go out there and talk to real people. Get out of the building and into their world.
I love that advice. It's so easy to get stuck in our own heads and forget to actually, talk to the people we're designing for.
It happens all the time. Second, embrace rapid prototyping. Don't get bogged down trying to make everything perfect right from the start. Create those quick, rough prototypes and test them with users early and often. It's much better to fail fast and learn from your mistakes than to spend months building something that nobody wants.
That sounds like a great way to save time and resources in the long run. By testing early and often, we can avoid those, expensive mistakes down the road.
Exactly. And it's not just about saving time and money, it's about getting feedback early on so we can make our solution even better. The more we test, the better our product becomes.
Okay, so we've got user research, rapid prototyping.
Yeah.
What else? What other secrets are you hiding up your sleeve? What else can we do to make our product discovery efforts a slam dunk?
Another key ingredient is to foster a culture of experimentation. Encourage your team to try new things, test different approaches, and be willing to change course if something's not working. Remember, failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone.
That reminds me of the fail fast, fail often mantra you hear so much in the startup world. It's about having a growth mindset and seeing failure as a chance to learn and get better.
Exactly. It's about creating a safe space where people feel comfortable taking risks, trying new things, and knowing it's okay to make mistakes. If we're not willing to experiment, we'll never discover those truly innovative solutions.
Okay, so we've got user research, rapid prototyping, and a culture that embraces experimentation. Those are fantastic tips. What else can we do to make sure our product discovery efforts are on point?
Another crucial strategy is to set clear goals and metrics for success. What are you trying to achieve with your product? How will you know if you're on the right track? By having those goals and metrics in place from the beginning, you can track your progress, see what's working, and make decisions based on real data.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's about setting those measurable goals and checking our progress along the way. It's so easy to get lost in the details and forget about the big picture. What other practical tips do you have for our listeners? What else should they keep in mind as they embark on their product discovery journey?
Well, another smart move is to use all the amazing tools and resources that are out there. There are tons of great product discovery tools available these days, from platforms for user research to software for prototyping. Don't be afraid to play around with different tools and see what works best for you and your team.
So it's about working smarter, not harder. Using tech to streamline the process and make our efforts go further. Any other nuggets of wisdom you want to share?
One last tip: document everything. As you go through the product discovery process, keep a record of your findings, decisions, and lessons learned. This documentation will be super valuable for future projects and can help you avoid making the same mistakes twice.
That's a great reminder. It's easy to get caught up in the moment and forget to document our process, but having that record can be so helpful down the line. It's like a treasure map that can guide us on future expeditions.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, hit me with it. I'm all ears.
Remember, product discovery is an iterative process. It's not about getting everything perfect on the first try. It's about constantly learning, adapting, and refining your solutions based on what you discover. It's a journey, not a destination.
I love that. Enjoy the ride, be open to new discoveries, and don't be afraid to experiment. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to create products that people truly love.
You said it perfectly. Now, I'm curious to hear what's been standing out for you. What are some of the key takeaways or insights that you're finding particularly valuable?
Well, for me, it's the emphasis on truly understanding user needs. It seems obvious, but it's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of building something new and lose sight of who we're building it for. We can get so focused on the tech or the features that we forget about the human beings who are actually going to be using our product.
That's so true. It's easy to fall in love with our own ideas and forget that the real measure of success is whether our product solves a real problem for real people. And product discovery, that's all about making sure we keep that human element front and center.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another takeaway for me is the importance of collaboration. That idea of a product trio working together from the very beginning, along with constant communication with stakeholders, that just seems like a recipe for success. It's about bringing different perspectives to the table and making sure everyone feels heard.
I'm totally with you on that. And it's not just about avoiding conflict, it's about tapping into the collective wisdom of the team. When we collaborate effectively, we can come up with solutions that are more creative, more resilient, and more likely to hit the mark with our users.
So collaboration, continuous learning, and a laser focus on user needs. Those seem to be the cornerstones of effective product discovery.
You nailed it. But there's one more element that I think is absolutely crucial: embracing uncertainty.
This sounds like a challenge, especially in a field where we're often striving for, predictability and control. How can we embrace uncertainty in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable?
It is a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. Product discovery, it's inherently uncertain. We're venturing into the unknown, testing assumptions, trying to predict the future, and that's okay. We need to be comfortable not having all the answers right away and be ready to adapt as we learn more.
So it's about embracing the unknown and seeing it as a source of creativity and innovation. It's about letting go of the need for control and being open to surprises.
Exactly. When we let go of that need for certainty, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and those aha moments, and that's where the real magic happens.
This has been such an incredible deep dive, and honestly, I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic, but I know our listeners are probably eager to hear how all of this connects to the bigger picture.
You're right. It's time to zoom out a bit and see where product discovery fits within the entire product development lifecycle.
Okay, let's connect the dots. Where does product discovery fit in the grand scheme of things? Is it a one-time event, or do we revisit it throughout the life of a product?
That's a great question. And the answer is, it's a continuous process. It's not something we do just once and then forget about. We need to be constantly engaging in product discovery, even after our product has launched.
So it's not like we flip a switch and all that knowledge from the discovery phase suddenly becomes irrelevant.
Absolutely not. In
Yeah.
fact, all those insights we gain from product discovery become even more valuable once our product is out in the world. We can use real user data, feedback, and behavior to inform our product roadmap, find new opportunities, and make sure we're constantly evolving to meet the ever-changing needs of our users.
This really underscores a crucial point. Product discovery isn't this linear process with a clear beginning and end. It's a continuous cycle of learning, adapting, and refining our approach.
You got it. And I think that's what makes it so exciting and challenging. We're never really done with product discovery. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more ways to make our products even better.
It's like we're constantly fine-tuning a musical instrument, making these small adjustments to create an even more beautiful sound.
I love that analogy. It's about always striving for improvement, even when things are going well.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation, and I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the art and science of product discovery.
I'm so glad to hear that. It's been a pleasure diving deep into this topic with you.
Before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought. We've talked about understanding user needs, embracing experimentation, and collaborating effectively. But I think the most important takeaway from this whole deep dive is this: never be afraid to ask questions.
Brilliant. Curiosity, that's at the very heart of product discovery. The more questions we ask, the more we learn, and the better equipped we'll be to create products that truly make a difference.
Exactly. So, to our listener, keep those questions coming. Don't be afraid to challenge assumptions, dig deep, and never stop exploring. You never know what incredible products you might discover along the way.
Well said. And until next time, keep diving deep.
That's a wrap for our deep dive into product discovery. We hope you found this exploration valuable. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on our next adventure into the world of knowledge. I think what's really hitting home for me is this idea that product discovery isn't just about minimizing risk, it's also about maximizing opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. It's not just about dodging bullets, it's about finding those hidden gems, exploring new avenues, and creating products that really blow people away.
Exactly. It's about going beyond just solving a problem. It's about creating something truly innovative and groundbreaking.
Totally agree. And I think that's where the real thrill of product discovery lies. It's about pushing the limits, questioning everything, and creating products that not only meet user needs, but totally surpass their expectations.
This deep dive has been amazing, and honestly, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this whole thing.
I know, right? There's so much more we could talk about. But I think we've given our listener a solid foundation, a good starting point for their own product discovery journey.
For sure. Speaking of journeys, I'm kind of curious, where does product discovery fit into the whole product development life cycle? Is it a one-time thing, or is it something we revisit throughout the life of a product?
Great question. It's an ongoing thing. It's not something you check off your list and then never think about again. We need to be constantly engaging in product discovery, even after the product's out there in the world.
So it's not like everything we learn in the discovery phase just becomes irrelevant once the product launches.
Not even close. In fact, all those insights we get from product discovery, they become even more valuable after launch. We can use real user data, feedback, and actual behavior to inform our roadmap, identify new opportunities, and just make sure we're always evolving, keeping up with the changing needs of our users.
This really highlights a crucial point. Product discovery isn't some linear process with a defined start and finish line. It's a constant cycle of learning, tweaking, and adapting.
You got it. And that's what makes it so exciting and challenging, We're never really done with product discovery. There's always something new to learn, new avenues to explore, and new ways to make our products even better.
It's like we're constantly fine-tuning a musical instrument, making those tiny adjustments to create an even more beautiful sound.
I love that analogy. It's about constantly striving for improvement, even when things seem pretty good already.
This conversation has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the art and science of product discovery.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. It's been a pleasure diving into this with you.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one last thought. We've talked about understanding user needs, embracing experimentation, and really emphasizing collaboration. But I think the most important takeaway from all of this is, don't ever be afraid to ask questions.
That's so true. Curiosity, that's the engine that drives product discovery. The more we ask, the more we learn, and the better we get at creating products that truly make a difference.
Exactly. So, to our listener out there, keep those questions coming. Challenge assumptions, dig deep, and never stop exploring. You never know what amazing products you might uncover along the way.
Beautifully said. And until next time, keep diving deep.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive into product discovery. We hope you found this exploration valuable. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on our next adventure into the world of knowledge.